This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Permix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den.
To the Healthy Scratch interview segment for episode number 63. Of course, I'm joined with my co-host Nick Maxton, as well as our guest for today, head coach of the men's hockey team, Brett Larson. Brett, how are you doing just after 7 a.m. on this Wednesday morning?
Good, doing real good. Obviously, June came around quick, and we're just in the office getting ready to hit the recruiting trail.
If I'm not mistaken, you actually had a little bit of travels down south to kind of get away, kind of recharge the batteries a little bit. First of all, how nice was it to sort of recharge the batteries, or at least just kind of get away from maybe the colder weather of North Dakota and Minnesota for a while?
Yeah, I loved it. I think most coaches need it. The year's a grind for sure. It's a fun grind, but it's a mental grind, and you need a little time to recharge. So it's always fun to get down there. The NCAA has the coaching convention down there that you have an excuse to get down there at least. And I might have extended that trip a little bit on both ends. So it was a really good time.
Now, for Brett, for those who maybe don't know what happens at the coaching conventions down there in the good old state of Florida, what are some of the things that takes place for the NCAA coaches during those meetings?
Well, on a typical year, this year was obviously a little bit different. It was condensed because of COVID. But on a typical year, you spend a few days, you get down there first and you have your league meetings. So the first few days are just with the NCHC. You're covering league topics, you're covering officiating, you're covering scheduling, any other issues that might have arisen in the league that year. And then you move it over to the national convention. At the national convention, there's everybody there. What some people, I didn't know that until this year, there's usually about 800 people there. This goes from Division I men's and women's all the way down to club hockey, men's and women's coaches. And there's just a great fraternity of coaches that way, where everyone's trying to connect. Everybody's kind of networking a little bit. Really good opportunities to learn from each other. You start with one big meeting for all the coaches at the beginning, and then you break it off into certain areas. Now our main meetings are what's called Division I men's issues. So in those meetings, you start to look at if it's a rule change year or not, with the NCAA voting on different rule changes potentially. You may look at recruiting rules. You may look at recruiting calendars. There's been pushes at times to have what are called dead periods within the calendar where you can't go out and recruit. And any major topic like that, you're discussing in those meetings. And then what I enjoy are the breakout sessions too, because what they do in the breakout sessions are you have usually a NCAA coach presenting on a topic. So I can pick those topics throughout the day. Do I want to go in and learn about the forecheck? Do I want to go in and learn about the mental side of the game? Whatever you want to do. So it's a really good opportunity, not only to go through kind of get into the weeds of rules and that type of thing, but it's also a good opportunity to grow as a coach.
Speaking of growing as a coach, Brett, when you talk about those breakout sessions, is there a particular section, a particular topic, like the forecheck, that sort of thing, where you really enjoy talking about that, or being in a group like that?
I mean, it's hard to pick any one because they're all so important, and it often depends on, I think, what you feel your team needs to prove on going into the next year. So you may be drawn to a topic like that. Maybe your power play struggled the year before, and you have an NHL coach down there giving a presentation on power play. Well, obviously you're gonna go to that one, So it kind of we're all kind of hockey junkies, and we all want to keep learning and keep getting better. So you just kind of pick what interests you the most.
Brett, that's a good transition into looking forward to next year. Now, it is past June 1st, which means the recruiting window, I believe, has finally opened. Is that not correct?
It has. So it's just amazing, actually, to think that we haven't been able to be on the road recruiting since last April. It's been well over a year. We haven't been able to have recruits in to visit. We haven't been able to do any of that. So our calendar is pretty full here. A typical schedule for college hockey coaches for recruiting, your busiest 2 months are June and July. We're going to head out to every USHL camp pretty much here in June. We'll break them up between the three of us. And then out in Buffalo, you have the select 15, 16, 17. So you get all the top U.S. kids in one spot in each age group. So they've all gone through tryouts to get there, and you get an opportunity to see the best in one spot. So you spend a few weeks out there. I'm going to head over to Europe for a little bit. We've got a couple commitments over there that unfortunately I can't, legally talk about yet till they've signed their letters of intent. But all I can tell you is one of them's got a brother on our team, so you guys can do your own digging there. But I'll head over there and make sure that we're continuing to build relationships with our Finnish pipeline, and we actually have a couple new countries in the mix. So we're excited about that. So it's going to be a couple really busy months here for recruiting.
Brett, I've got kind of an interesting question that I just thought of before we get to this year's incoming class. And I don't know how much you can divulge, but of course, at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center, when the Huskies are playing, there's no shortage of NHL scouts in the buildings at certain times. And you get to kind of see their process for their essentially recruiting, if you will. And some of them, they recruit by essentially rating players on 1 to 5 and that sort of thing, like in different areas of their game. I don't know how much you can give away, but is there a certain kind of process to recruiting that maybe you could touch on for fans who maybe don't know a little bit about when you show up to the rink and you're recruiting, what exactly you're looking for, if you have an interest in a particular player or that sort of thing?
Sure. There's so much that goes into it. You're identifying kids from a real young age, and we call it tracking. You're really just watching their development. And the more you've recruited, the more you've scouted as a college coach, you have pictures in your mind of, okay, what did Jimmy Schultz look like when he was 15? What did Ryan Paling look like when he was 15? And you kind of, you're making these comparisons in your head all the time and trying to track these kids. Now, the real, I would say, recruiting and scouting, it's not foolproof. It's not 100%, because what you see is some of the best kids at 15 and 16-year-olds aren't the best kids at 19 and 20. There's a development pattern there and a path. So what you're trying to do really is determine at a fairly young age who is going to be the best as they get older, which is probably the toughest part of it. And you look at the NHL draft, for an example, there's a lot of first-round draft picks that don't make it. So it's not a foolproof science for sure, but you're just trying to use your experience, what you've been through before. Really, when you're recruiting young, you're trying to build those lists, track. But at some point, which would be August 1st, going into their junior year now with the new rules, schools can start to offer them scholarships. So you have to be prepared for that date. Are you going to take a swing at a young kid that you really believe is going to continue to get better? Or are you going to hold off and wait for the older late bloomer and really know what you're getting as a 19, 20-year-old out of junior hockey? And I can tell you our philosophy here is to try to have a mix of both. You don't want to swing too many times early, because to be honest, it's about a 50-50 ratio when you're going real young. So you want to have room for that older late bloomer who has always made St. Cloud a great program, but you also want to take the occasional young kid too that you really believe can keep getting better and being an impact player.
One guy that comes to mind for me, Brett, in terms of guys that develop very nicely, plays for the Los Angeles Kings, is Blake Lizotte and his work ethic. Is recruiting, as much as obviously you're focused on these players, at 15, 16, 17, who have this, somewhat God-given or natural talent for the game of hockey, is there almost a focus sometimes on understanding the person off the ice as well and their work ethic and what they might develop into, understanding that they're almost like a mold of clay, if you will, that maybe they're at this spot at 15, but that their work ethic is going to continue to improve and they're personally going to develop better as they get older and into that college realm?
Well, that's obviously the other side of it, right? So as you're just sitting in a rink watching, you're also calling their coaches. You're digging into who they are. You're trying to get a feel for what type of person they are, because those traits obviously give you a better understanding of making that risk of going after a young player, right? You're never going to go after a young player if you haven't done a ton of homework to try to figure out, are they the first kid on the ice and off the ice? Do they do extra? How do they treat their teammates? What's their work ethic like? Because then you're thinking, okay, this kid's got talent now, and if he keeps working at it and he's one of the elite workers on his team, then maybe he's got the chance to keep getting better. So that's all factored into your decision whether you were going to offer a young player on that August 1st deadline or not. Or not deadline, but initial date of being able to offer that at that age. So you factor all that into your decision. You do a ton of homework on it, and you want to be very careful when you do that because it is a commitment both ways. So it is a verbal commitment, but it's a commitment, and you want to make sure that you're doing your best you can to honor those things. And you ask the kids to honor them as well. It's a two-way street. You want them to commit to continue to work hard and do the things that they can do to continue to develop.
And Brett, I think it leads us perfectly into a transition into the three recruits that we have coming in for this year. I want to go through these one by one a little bit. I guess, what have you seen from these guys? What should fans should expect from these guys? For instance, we can start with Mason Salmquist. Start with him, and what does he bring here to the hockey squad?
Well, it's interesting, and I'll just take Mason and Jack Pert for right now, and then I'll get to Josh Lutke, and we're really excited about this class. Very excited. But Mason and Jack are kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum that I just talked about in that recruiting process where, Jack was one of the best 15 and 16-year-olds we felt in the country. We did our homework on his character and who he is and how he was raised and the people he'd been around. And we, obviously did a ton of homework and just loved him on and off the ice and felt that he had the opportunity to keep getting better. And he was the one of the 50% that did, at that young age. And we couldn't be happier that we were able to recruit him and get him to be a Husky. It's been a great relationship, and he comes from a great family. So that's been awesome. Now, he was that best kid from early on, but he did keep working hard and kept developing. Mason Salmquist is a kid that, was cut from, I believe, 3 or 4 teams, multiple junior teams, kept working, had to go through the grind, never told he's the best kid. We recruited him his 19-year-old year out of Fargo, where he had a good year up there in the USHL. And this last year, he was a captain and he was the team's leading scorer until he had a pretty bad injury and was out for a couple months, and then came back and helped him get to the final. So there's 2 kids that, are really good players. They're going to make a great impact here at St. Cloud State, but totally opposite ends of the spectrum on that recruiting scale we talked about. Josh Lutke is a kid who's had a great career in junior hockey the last 2 years, played in Des Moines. He's a Minnetonka kid, won a state championship there, really highly regarded in the state as one of the best defensemen to come out of the state as well. So, he kind of fit in that middle group a little bit of where he was in the recruiting process, but we couldn't be more excited about this group.
One question I was curious about too with that recruiting process, Brett, you talk about, again, late bloomers versus guys that, maybe have that spark early. Who is your guidance or who is your reference for goaltenders? Because David Rennick obviously coming back for his 5th season. I was just kind of curious as you look forward into the future, for maybe bringing in another goaltender or 2, who do you rely on? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like goaltenders are always kind of a crapshoot and are really challenging, especially for those of us who have never really played the position.
I do think it's the toughest position to recruit, and that's where you really rely on your network. And you probably saw that we do have a goalie committed and that just came out here, drafted by Sioux Falls, but obviously can't comment on him until he signs his NLI. But that's where you rely on your network. Guys in the NHL, they're goalie coaches that you ask them to watch video. The NHL scouts that that are out watching these guys. Anybody that you feel, and there are people that, I guess, in recruiting, there are people in your network that you really trust kind of in different areas. And with our staff, we have people that we really rely on to help us make those decisions that we feel are really good with that position. And I agree, it's probably the toughest position to recruit, but it's also the most important one. So you got to be right on that one because, as you watch the Stanley Cup playoffs or, you look at the next series with Winnipeg and Montreal, well, both teams are there with a great goalie, and there's no doubt that goaltending can win championships. So it's obviously an extremely important position to recruit for. And at least me personally, maybe other schools are a little bit different, but you rely on your network. We have a goalie coach, Matt Bertram here, who's done a great job with our goalies. Rely on him to watch some video on these kids. He can't get out and recruit with the rules, but he'll watch a lot of video on kids before we move forward, use our network. And again, a lot of recruiting is just homework. You have to do the homework, and especially on a goalie.
I've got another recruiting question for you, and actually ties in well with that homework piece, Brett. And every coaching staff and every organization has a different philosophy with the new trend, especially in the recent decade with advanced analytics and kind of looking deeper into stat lines and those sort of things. For your coaching staff specifically, does the eye candies test still kind of stay predominant in addition to that advanced stats, or is it kind of becoming more of a balance as you move forward?
Well, it's not like you can get a ton of analytics out of high school. They don't keep a lot of those stats and whatnot. I still think for us, it's the eye test. It's not only the eye test, but it's, you look at how St. Cloud's recruited, and we're going to continue to recruit that way. You're looking at 75 to 80% of your kids from Minnesota. So the good thing is with those kids, I mean, you've watched them since they were 15, and you get to see them in different areas. For instance, I can give you a little window into our summer, which is nice normally. So let's say a Minnesota kid, you'd watch them. They call it the 54s at the end of the year down in Plymouth, where they're basically trying to go out to Buffalo for the national camp. So you see all the top Minnesota kids there. Then you see the top of those kids out in Buffalo. Then you see most of those kids. So you see them in their age groups there. Then you see them in a USHL camp, where now they're in an age group of 16 or 15 to 20. How do they do when they're in that age group with some older players? You see them in the Minnesota High School Elite League at the beginning of the season and in the fall, and then you see them into their high school year. And you take all that together and you decide if you're willing to make an offer yet or not. If you really like a player, but you still want to see more development, then you hope that they're willing to not go somewhere else yet if they're getting some offers and play junior hockey. And we've done that a lot wherever I've been. We've waited on kids till they get to that junior hockey to see how they translate to that level, because when you can see that they can translate to that level, that gives you a really good window into how they'll translate into the next level. So you've kind of got this whole process that you go through. At least for me personally, not a lot of it is stats driven, but it is driven by seeing them in different type settings where you get a little bit different view into the challenges they face, who they are, and you kind of see their growth throughout, not only throughout the summer, but then year by year.
And Brett, not because your schedule isn't busy enough with recruiting. One of the other, I guess, duties as a head coach is also to help with the communication and connections with the alumni is right. You have a couple of announcements. I want to start first with the alumni golf outing that's coming up into July. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We'll start with that one. Sure. July 30th at the Territories in town here. We had over 100 guys last year, hoping that the good year on the ice will even draw some more guys back this year. It's just a great event. Honestly, it's not a fundraiser. It's pretty laid back, and it's just fun. And guys enjoy coming back. Obviously, we have a dinner after and have some fun after the deal. But it's just golf. It's just getting guys together, and it's a lot of old stories and guys seeing old friends. And really, I think it's one of the best things about this game. You're a Husky for life, and the guys live that, and they know that. For most of them, for the best years of your life were here in St. Cloud, and they'll tell you that. And I can also tell you they love getting back here and reminiscing about those 4 years. So it's just a lot of fun. It's instead of a fundraiser, it's a relationship builder. It's an opportunity for me as a new coach here to continue to get to know more and more of the guys, connect with them, and I've personally really enjoyed it, and I know they do too.
And the follow-up on that is we do have something new that we are starting this summer. I'll let you go and take it away and let the fans know what this new endeavor might be.
I don't want to call it an announcement at all today. It's more a little bit of just kind of giving you a window into something that we're moving towards. And obviously it was a tough year financially with COVID. You think of the revenue lost of not having this rink full with fans every game alone. That's just one part of it, right? So we are going to start something called the Miracle Society, which is going to be an opportunity for fans to really help us kind of dig out of that hole a little bit financially, make sure the program can stay where it needs to be. And that'll be coming out midsummer here. It's going to be a really neat opportunity for people to at least help the university, because in all honesty, we're not the only one. This is a challenging time financially for a lot of people. And I think it's going to be a really good way for people to be able to see that, hey, costs keep going up. Running a Division I college hockey program in a normal year is a challenge, but trying to keep it going after a year where all that revenue was lost. I do know that the university needs a little bit of help right now to recover from that, and we're gonna. That's not a question, but I think the added help from the fans and the alumni once we start this Miracle Society can really help.
We got to sit down, Nick and I did last week with NCHC Commissioner Josh Fenton, and he talked about the potential maybe for some of these buildings to hopefully get back towards that normal capacity like you talked about. As you move forward, obviously with 3 new incoming players and the new season with a pretty interesting schedule in the fall, is there anything that you're really looking forward to kind of getting rolling in the fall early?
Well, I just watched the Boston Islander game the other night in Boston when that place was absolutely rocking. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to having the best fans in hockey back in the best rink in hockey with the best atmosphere in hockey because we missed it. I can tell you, and I've said this to you guys before, I've experienced this rink as an opposing coach and as a home coach, and I like it a lot better as a home coach. I can tell you that because it's a momentum building. You can just feel it. And, I think back to a couple games this year and I think to what maybe could have happened. We one in particular against Western Michigan at home that we ended up losing in overtime where we got scored on with like 6 seconds left. But we had a power play and then a 5-on-3. We scored on the power play, but then we got a 5-on-3 just after it. And we didn't score on that 5-on-3. But I just wonder with, those moments in the games, that place would have been rocking. People would have been on their toes. Just the excitement and energy in the rink that would have been there. Could that have been enough to get you that next goal and maybe put that game away? Things like that. So more than anything, I'm looking forward to seeing our fans back in the stands here. And one of the most disappointing things about last year, I think, is we had such a fun team to watch. And I know a lot of people watched on TV, but they didn't get to see them in person here at the Herb. So I'm hoping we can have the same type of year next year. And I know the fans will really enjoy it.
I really like that analogy too. It's kind of those moments you think about, like when you have a power play and the team takes another penalty, and you almost feel it in the building, right? That kind of, oh boy, here we go. Like something's about to break. We don't know what it is, but something's happening. We have an interesting segment moving forward. We have a couple of trivia questions here for you, Brett, but they are about your time at St. Cloud State. But before we get to that, speaking of those here we go moments, when you've had fans in the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center, has there been a game or been kind of one of those moments where you've been like, wow, the energy in here is just kind of at another gear or another level? Is there a specific game or moment that in your time here that you can maybe pinpoint, maybe even as an opposing coach that you've noticed as well?
Well, there's one for me that just stands out, and it was last year against North Dakota at home. We beat them on a shootout on Friday night. Broadsley scored the game winner in the shootout. And if you remember, so I guess it was 2 years ago, not this last season, but 2 years ago. The first half of the year was really tough, right? We had lost 16 of those guys. It was a rebuild year. Those guys really hung in there and kept working. Heck, we won 2 out of our first 12 games. A lot of people forget that. We were 2-6-4 at one point. The guys that battled back to 500. Saturday night, we beat North Dakota in here and we block a shot, right? I think one of our players thought that they shot it after the whistle and a little melee ensued and typical big time rivalry between St. Cloud and North Dakota. Guys got after a little bit out there, and we have that on video here from a fan who took it from down by the glass, and you can just see the other side of the rink. So the video came from the side opposite of the benches, but you can see everybody standing up and you can just feel the energy in that building. That was really fun. And then, what's really interesting is my very first year here, we played 2 overtime games with Colorado College towards the end of the year, that this building was absolutely just packed. And the players will tell you that was the loudest they've ever heard this building ever. Jimmy Schultz and those guys will tell you that weekend was unbelievable, because it was not a real big deal, but the guys were proud of it. It was an opportunity to go undefeated at home in the regular season, and CC had leads both those nights, and we were able to come back and win in the overtime, and the building was just rocking there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think my favorite, speaking of taking videos, when Nick and I have been doing broadcasting, I actually took a couple of videos that year that you were talking about, both in that North Dakota series and then that Duluth series for Hockey Day Minnesota. I have a nice little video of Jack Ashawn, that redirect by Nick Paling in front. It's
great play. That was a great play. It's just too bad we were wearing those jerseys that night. No offense to Jeremiah. That was a great game. And that was I agree with you. That was right up there too.
Yeah, I'll have to send you that. Just, I love the view when you get to see the net pop, right? You see Hunter Shepard like this and kind of that reaction, with a minute and a half left that it's like, oh.
That was a battle of a game too. Best game I've ever been a part of, though, wasn't, just hockey game, was the championship game for the NCHC against Duluth that went double overtime. My first year here, just a heck of a game. But you know what, the energy in the Herb, it honestly doesn't get better. It's a huge recruiting tool for us. This is a college hockey rink. This is what college hockey is meant to be, playing in this rink, and it's something special.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, a couple upgrades for that with the scoreboard and sound system this year as well too.
Well, we're working on that. That's not. Does
that come out of your pocket, Brett, or what?
We're hoping. Yeah, I don't have an extra $1 million in my pocket. If anybody does, let us know. If anybody's watching, and they can call me directly, and we'll go out for lunch, and they can write a check. But I'm kidding. There's some exciting things going on with that, and we'll see if it's ready for this year. But if not, I'm almost certain it'll be ready for next year.
Yeah. Nick, do you have anything else to add before we get to some of these trivia questions that after listening to Brett reminisce about all these games, I'm feeling like we might have went a little light on the trivia questions, but maybe that's a good thing.
I think we need to stick with the trivia here, just for everybody's sake here. Plus, I'm curious to see what how much he can reminisce in some of these moments. Although I think he'll get 9 out of 10. I think you're going to pass this one, Brett.
All right. Well, I feel like I'm back in school here. You guys got me for this before the show too, so we'll see.
That's why you became a hockey coach, right? No more math and such. I guess we'll have to see. This is our third edition here of the Huskies Hat Trick Trivia. First two, of course, featuring Nick and I. I got a feeling you're going to do all right as well. We're going to start.
How'd Nick do?
Not good.
Nick got a 1. I might have set him up for failure on that one. So, Nick, do you remember how I did? Not to toot my own horn or anything. Do you remember how many I got right?
It's good self-brag.
5, maybe?
6. Come at me.
See, this is the problem when you have Noah Grant as your host, is that he takes every opportunity to let you know he is the lead host, and that's one of the ways that he goes. Anyway, let's enter into it. Top 10 questions here for Mr. Brett Larson here, Chief.
Hey, speaking of which, do you have the trivia list up, Nick?
I can.
Would you like to alternate questions? Would you like to co-host with me, as they say? We could be a team on this one if you'd like to. That's
switch
it up. Anyway, question number 1. We're going to start back. A couple questions from 2018-19 for you, Brett. First one here. There's going to be 4 answers for each question. You have 10 to 15 seconds max to think on them. So, in 2018-19, who led St. Cloud State in points? Blake Lizotte, Robbie Jackson, Jimmy Schultz, or Patrick Newell?
Jeez, I'm going to go Patrick Newell.
It is Patrick Newell. Patrick Newell had 46 points. Blake Lizotte had 40. Robbie had 39, and Jimmy Schultz had 34 points. Congratulations, 1 for 1.
That was a fun group to inherit. I can tell you that.
Nick, he's tied for second.
He's already tied. So
yeah.
All right. So question number 2, Brett. In the same year of 18-19, who was the only NCH team the Huskies tied more than once that year? Was it North Dakota? Was it Miami, Colorado, or Denver?
Well, what do you consider a tie at the end of 5-on-5 play?
Yes. Official tie.
Yeah. I'll go Colorado College.
It's actually Miami, I believe. Miami. Wasn't it back-to-back on that? No, if I remember correctly.
It was November 30th and
I thought
December
both our
1st.
overtime games were against CC at home. That both games against CC went in the overtime.
Noah, did you?
I suppose research? They did, but only one got to that tie. After that, I suppose 5-on-5 versus 3-on-3. You know what? I'm gonna
give it to him.
Yeah, You'll give it to him. That's fair. All right, it's already right. He's like, this is
an R&D coach. The R&D guy is already failing you. So
you might technically be right, because the rules kind of changed this year, right? So at the end of 5-on-5 this year was technically a tie. Whereas that year it would have been
after
tie
3-on-3,
and after the first 5-on-5 overtime finish.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
Based on this year's rules, I was right.
Yeah.
Based on that year's rules, I was wrong. So you guys can take that.
I don't know.
You got the point.
I don't know if I want to argue with Brett. I'd like to have him back on the show. But anyway, the ones that I've listed are Miami for November 30th and December 1st, 4-4 and 2-2. Yeah. The only other one that season was Colorado College. So you weren't far off on that one.
Okay.
Number 3, the last one here from 2018-19. Which opponent did St. Cloud score the most goals in a single game against in that season? Was it Western Michigan, Omaha, Bemidji, or Boston College?
Oh boy, I'm gonna go Boston College.
It was actually Western Michigan. Omaha, Bemidji, and BC, y'all had 7. Michigan, you had 8.
We had 8, really?
In an 8-2 victory. It's actually one of the last few times that Western Michigan has really been rocked in their own building.
Yeah.
It's been quite a while. So if I'm not mistaken, it was the first time the Huskies have scored 8 goals in like a conference game since like the 90s or something like that. I could be wrong, but kudos to that. So you are 2-1 currently right now.
Yeah.
No, I think you need to take this next one because I'm not quite sure about the answer in this one. So I just want to make sure that you that's yours.
It's that tough.
Yeah,
Wow,
that
okay.
tough.
It's a pretty straightforward question. All right.
But you have an asterisk in one of the answers, so I just want to
No,
make sure.
the asterisk is the answer.
Got it. Okay. Well, you have no asterisk in the other one, so I just wanted to make sure. All right. Question 4, Brett. Last 3 seasons, how many St. Cloud of teams have won at least 12 games? 0, 1, 2, or 3?
3.
Yep.
Yep.
All 3 of them at least won 12 because he finished. Was it last year? Was it 12? Was it 12-12 or 13-12?
12, 13.
12, 13. Yeah.
Well, we didn't get to finish, so maybe that's why the asterisk.
Maybe that's maybe.
I like seriously. Yeah, that record. We're proud of that record because how we started, but we wanted to finish it and didn't get the opportunities because you never know what could have happened with that team.
That was a team that I think, at least for myself
Dark
and
horse.
I consider it a dark horse team. Just from how you guys started to where you guys had trended upwards. Absolutely agree on that one.
Yeah, 30 wins in 2018, 19 and 13 the next year, and 20 last year for the Huskies. So you are correct on that one. 3-1. Question number 5. In the last 3 years, who has had the most power play goals in a single season? So with the 3 seasons combined, who holds the record for most power play goals in a single season during that span? Is it Nick Paling, Patrick Newell, Easton Brodzinski, or Vieti Mietinen?
I'll go with Brodzinski.
It is Brodzinski. He led 2 of the 3 years. He had 7 in 2018, 5 in 2019, and 4 last year. On a follow-up for that one, Brett, who led the team this year?
I'll go Vieti.
It was. He had 5 this year. He had 5. Patrick Newell had 6 in 2018, and Nick Paling had 3 last year. So, all right, number 6, Nick. He is 4-1.
Okay, so 4-1 going into number 6. Who was the only NCHC team St. Cloud had not beaten on the road in the last 3 seasons until this year? Was it Omaha, Denver, Western Michigan, or North Dakota? This one might be a tricky one.
I think this one's the hardest one.
Hadn't beat on the road until this year.
Mm-hmm.
Say the 4 teams again.
Omaha, Denver, Western, or North Dakota.
And when I say on the road, it also includes being in the pod as the visiting
That's
team.
what I was going to say because we didn't play Omaha on the road technically. We didn't play Western on the road technically. We didn't play Denver on the road technically. So I'd say it's got to be Denver.
It is
right.
Denver.
Yeah.
That is correct. Won 4-3 as the road team in game number 2 of the pod. Before that, it had been 2015 since the Huskies had beaten Denver on the road. So yeah, 5-1.
5-1. Your lead is in jeopardy there, Mr.
I know I'm
Malagran.
shaking in my boots. I think we should just call trivia now. What do you think? All right, number 7. In the spring of 2020, I think you'll like this, Brett. In the spring of 2020, a certain reporter called a game-winning slap shot for St. Cloud against North Dakota, quote, ill-advised.
Ill-advised.
Disregarding how expert that analysis was. Who scored the game winner that night in a 3-2 win on home ice? Was it Jack Paling, Nick Perbix, Easton Brodzinski, or Kevin Fitzgerald?
Jack Paling.
It was Jack Paling, his 9th of the season.
Quick on the trigger, too, just so you know. He was ready for that one.
Yeah. I can picture it right in my head. I can picture the goal, the shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wish you would have dumped it in the corner instead, maybe, and we could have had a good shot.
I can still see it from the press box. I can just see the shooting percentages decrease as he enters the zone and lines up, and
I can still hear the coach's answer after that first question in the press box, but that's okay. Moving forward.
It's usually a good icebreaker for guests before they come on the show, though. It helps them relax a little bit. So
exactly. Question 8: since becoming the Huskies head coach in the fall of 2018, how many wins has St. Cloud had against Duluth? Is it 4, 5, 8, or 10?
Well, I do know we went 5-2 this year. And again, the wins, because some of them were overtime wins. So I don't know if we're counting those as full wins
full wins.
Full wins. Yep.
So would you agree that our record was 5-2 against them this year?
Yep.
With the overtime stuff?
That's correct.
And we had to have we had 2 the year before. We swept them. I'm going to say 10.
That's correct. You had 10-6 right now all time against your alma mater, which are a couple of these last 2 questions are going to feature some stuff in your alma mater.
Mm-hmm. We also have a new trivia leader here, Nick, with seven correct answers currently. Nick, maybe you want to take this one and I'll grab the last one. How does that sound?
Sure, why not? All right, 2011, as you won your first ever national championship as an assistant coach with Duluth, 3-2 in overtime against Michigan at the Xcel Energy Center. Who scored that famous game winner to give the Bulldogs the first ever national championship? Was it Justin Fontaine, Jack Connolly, Justin Falk, or Kyle Schmidt?
Isn't it funny? That's like a loaded question. All those guys were other than Kyle, no offense to Kyle, but most people would have picked the other 3, but Kyle Schmidt had the goal.
He absolutely did. It was his 11th goal of the year and arguably one of the biggest goals ever in UMD history. And that was the correct answer. And man, I got to do my homework more for the next time we do trivia.
You guys let me off easy on this thing. You guys.
Well, we want to make sure you're coming back.
If I got that question wrong, kick me off the show. But.
It was actually kind of interesting. Nick and I talked about it. He proofread my questions, and I said, "Well, I hope he gets number 9." And he goes, "I hope for your sake he does too." Because I
don't think we'd have kicked you off our show, but maybe Bruce Siski up in Duluth would have different words about that.
Fun fact for Huskies fans before we hit our final question here: Bruce Siski, when we do our NCHC preview for the Bulldogs, Nick, I think it's fair to announce this, tentatively scheduled to join us as well as a Healthy Scratch interview segment guest. So, Brett, you're going to have to send us a couple of questions to ask Bruce.
For sure. I will.
When we get to early July there. But the final question also involves the Bulldogs. In 1994-95, a 22-year-old Brett Larson finished 5th in total team scoring and 1st among defensemen for the Bulldogs with 31 points in his senior year. However, who led the team in points that season for the Bulldogs? Was it Rusty Fitzgerald, Mike Peluso, Brad Fedorenko, or Joe Rybar?
I'll go Rusty Fitzgerald.
Actually, Brad Fedorenko with
did
49 points that year. Rusty was second.
I think he might have only been like a sophomore, maybe even a freshman that year. But
38 points for Rusty, 34 for Mike Peluso, and Joe Rybar was actually 6th with 29 points on that one. Funny enough, Mike Peluso actually coaches in North Dakota now, so actually had a chance.
He's a big walleye fisherman guide out there. If he's got a good life out there.
So congratulations, Nick and Brett. You were correct, Nick. Brett, 9-1 on those answers. The next time you come back, I think we're going to have to make them a little bit more challenging. Nick might have to write the questions on that one, but congratulations.
Well, it's funny, guys, because you asked about stats, and I always tell our players all the time, like I really don't. Well, there's certain stats. I mean, the stats we evaluate are analytic stats, and that's being involved in chances for and against and things like that. But oftentimes I tell the guys, I have no idea how many points you have. I really don't. You're not evaluated on points on a given night. You're evaluated in your play that either creates opportunities for points or creates opportunities for the other team to score, and you're evaluated in those things. But if you want to get me, throw a lot of those points and things in there, because I don't know that very often. I don't know how I pulled the Patrick Newell one out early, but that was a little luck.
Well,
they don't ask how, they ask how many, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, maybe before we go, Nick, I guess I thought of one final question, because Brett, of course, loves just sitting here instead of doing his job for the day, right? So my final question is this. Speaking of guys that maybe don't show up on the score sheet, when you look back to last season, is there a guy or two that maybe kind of fits that mold, that really plays that brand of Huskies hockey, that maybe wasn't a guy that was a huge contributor on that score sheet and maybe is kind of undervalued, if you will, in that lineup?
Well, I mean, at the end of the year, everybody saw it, but I know the team felt that way all year. Will Hammer. I mean, Will's going to be just really, really missed by this club for sure. face-offs, wins, penalty kill, ability to play against top lines, do the job every night, not care if he got any credit or not. I think he was the ultimate team guy that way, and he's kind of the poster boy for that question you just asked. I think he's the guy that brings so much value, but you don't see it on the score sheet.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned poster boy. I was looking at Brett Hedekin's poster behind him. Congratulations to him for getting his degree as well.
Well, yeah, actually, Brett's doing a Zoom call with our team today. I'm excited about it. So Brett's going to do we do team building Zoom calls throughout the spring and early summer, and Brett's going to do one today. I know the guys are excited for it, so we're looking forward to it too.
Very, very good. I think with that, I think that wraps it up, doesn't it not? Here for episode number 63, head coach Brett Larson. Again, thanks for joining us. We'll have to definitely catch up with you right before the season starts. Hopefully this time it will be set as it is October, because it's quite a really exciting schedule coming up. So again, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.
And once again, always a pleasure to sit down with Brett Larson. Brett, Canada, as always, actually 8-2 in trivia today, in case those of you who are following realize that Noah Grant can't do math at all. But nonetheless, the math that we have coming up for this week, the Denver Pioneers are actually the ones that are on the docket next here in our NCHC preview for episode number 64. So stay tuned for our Sunday show, and we will see you next week.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores. Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it. He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real. Welcome to the NHL. A game winner.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.